never faze me. They watch the steps that I be taking. That's why they say that I'm amazing. Been the top dog before the nonsense. I've always been a public figure. Now the frame didn't got too big, cause more people wanna get up in it.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm your host, John Madsen. This is the show. Welcome to another Monday. This show is going to be about imposter syndrome, and I'm going to hit this, give you 4 action steps on what you can do to beat imposter syndrome, because if you're listening to this show, like I felt imposter syndrome before, and some of you are supremely successful and you're reaching for that next level. At some point, they've all felt this feeling of imposter, because all masters start a beginner. And at the beginning, there is this feeling of inadequacy. There is this feeling of, can I do this? There is this feeling of, who am I to do this for some of you? I had those feelings. I want you guys to understand this fully. There's some people out there that have done a really, really, really good job of managing this. I don't know if you can beat it, but there's some people where courage trumps it. And so what I want for you to get out of this podcast is I want there to be tangible movement in your pursuit to your own excellence, to your own goals. Because this imposter syndrome for some of you is a roadblock that you can't get around. This feeling of imposter is keeping you from your pursuit. And so what we really got to do is we really have to understand that imposter syndrome is just a really fancy label for fear. It sounds way cooler to say, hey, John, like I have this feeling that like I feel like an imposter. I feel like I have an imposter syndrome, instead of saying, hey, John, I'm afraid. But think about this. If you weren't afraid of failing, if you weren't afraid of losing, if you weren't afraid of embarrassment, if you weren't afraid of criticism, there would be no imposter syndrome. What it really comes down to is, do you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? Are you willing to suck in order to be great? Most people aren't willing to suck. They don't like sucking. They don't like losing. It hurts their ego. But the winners are always willing to suck in the beginning. They're willing to take the arrows. They're willing to get on the podcast and have people say that it sucks. They're willing to put out posts on social and have other people disagree and want to argue with them. They're willing to stand up for what they believe and disregard whether or not other people are going to agree. They're willing to lose, which makes them dangerous. And so this imposter syndrome, I'm going to get into the 4 steps for you to beat it. The first step is self-awareness. So if you're taking notes, just understand that the first step is awareness. If you can feel the feeling in your body, wherever it resides, maybe it's in your chest, maybe it's in your stomach, maybe it's in your head, but there's this feeling that's somewhere. I want you to be extremely aware of it, because without awareness, there is no next step. Part of self-awareness is understanding what exactly you're afraid of. Because if you're feeling like an imposter and you decided to do it, are you afraid of losing? Are you afraid of losing all your money? Are you afraid of losing your reputation? Are you afraid of just failing in other people's eyes? Are you afraid of failing in front of your spouse? Are you afraid of failing in front of your kids? Are you afraid of failing in front of your parents? Are you afraid of getting embarrassed by your peers by just completely sucking, and that's gonna hurt your ego, so you'd rather protect it and not try? Are you afraid of criticism from a coach or from somebody else? Are you afraid of getting criticized by your spouse or by your parents? What exactly are you afraid of? Without this self-awareness, you cannot move. When I felt imposter syndrome in the online coaching space 3 years ago, I had to really acknowledge what I was afraid of. And until I was self-aware enough to break that down, there was no movement. So the very first step for you, note takers, self-awareness. Number 2, borrow belief. I'm gonna say it again, borrow someone else's belief. One of the fastest ways for me to beat imposter syndrome, if I'm feeling it, is to find a person, a mentor, a coach who's already done what you want to do, and somebody who believes in you more than you believe in yourself. I say this all the time. I'm a coach. If you haven't joined the Superhuman program, like you should, but if you don't, in whatever it is that you're feeling an imposter about, you should understand that there's a person out there who's already done what you want to do. And there's a person out there that you could probably hire that would give you the exact game plan that you could believe in, and that person would believe in you more than you could believe in yourself. Because until you have enough belief to step on your own, you need to borrow it from somebody else. When I had imposter syndrome at the University of Utah, I needed to borrow belief from Urban Meyer. He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. I see certain things in my clients that they don't see in themselves yet. I have a game plan for them to follow that they can believe in because I know it'll work every single time. So when I didn't know yet if I fully believed, I borrowed it from the right coach at the right time. I was blessed in that moment to understand how powerful that was. And I've done this over and over and over again in my life. So if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, borrow someone else's belief. Find the right person. Step number 3. This one is everything. Courage. In my old gym in Salt Lake City, I had a graffiti artist write fearless across one of the brick walls because I thought that was the goal. I thought that this idea of fearlessness, right, was what people that succeeded felt. And I learned that that was wrong. These people weren't fearless that I looked up to. They were courageous. They still had the fear. They still had some of the fear. It's all good to feel like an imposter, right? It's all good to get to the starting line and feel nervous. It's all good to get to the starting line and be like, I don't know if I can do this. That's fine. But the people who win have courage. The people who win have bigger courage than they do fear. So whether or not you're feeling like you have this imposter syndrome, this label, no matter what that is, the answer is to move through it. The last thing is show up relentlessly. Show up relentlessly. There was many days that I didn't want to show up. There was many days where I had a lot of reasons not to show up. There was many days where other people decided that they weren't going to show up. And I continued to show up relentlessly. And in business, I've done the same thing. I've been punched in the face in business multiple times. On the brink of bankruptcy, I've had multiple reasons to give up on my dream. But this ability to show up is really the greatest separator of all. The ability to show up relentlessly for yourself, because all of this sounds good, right? And some of you guys are like, dude, this episode hit, like, thank you so much. But you know what? I'll know if it hit if in 10 years you're still in the game, because most people are out of it. When it gets a little too hard, they veer off. 95% of people shut down businesses before the 5-year mark. This relentless ability to show up over and over and over again, to have the courage to go through it all, to have the self-awareness at every step. This ability, the superpower, this consistency is going to be the thing that separates you from winning and you from always feeling like you're at the beginning. If you feel like you have imposter syndrome, it's all good. It's just a feeling. You get to decide what to do with it. Instead of wishing that it wasn't there, just take the next step, and then the next step after that, and then the next step after that, and the next step after that. And then 10 years from now, someone's going to be asking you, what do you do when you feel like an imposter? And you won't feel like an imposter anymore because you did what most people weren't willing to do.